Captain Ryan Mitchell's finger tightened around the trigger, and with a deafening crack, the alien's head erupted in a shower of gore, splattering against the wall behind it. The alien crumpled to the floor, lifeless before it even had a chance to process what had happened. The Zorax had underestimated the human outpost, thinking they could launch an attack without facing repercussions. Mitchell and his team were determined to make them regret that misjudgment with every ounce of their resolve. Humans weren't just dangerous. They were the most merciless, shrewd warriors in the galaxy, honed by millennia of relentless conflict. Attacking humans was the gravest mistake any species could make. It was almost a universal rule. Never provoke humans unless you were prepared for a world of pain. Just hours before, Mitchell had been performing his routine duties at the isolated human military station, monitoring patrols and communication channels. Boredom had consumed him, a desire for action palpable in the air. That monotony vanished the instant unidentified alien vessels entered the star system, ignoring all attempts to establish contact. As Mitchell tracked their approach on long-range scanners, every instinct screamed that trouble was imminent. He swiftly mobilized his small crew, bracing for a hostile engagement. Those instincts proved accurate when the Zorax ships opened fire without warning, their advanced weaponry hammering the outpost with brutal efficiency. The human shield strained under the assault, barely holding. Mitchell's jaw clenched as he manipulated the weapon controls, retaliating with everything they had. Outgunned and outnumbered, the outpost faced dire odds, but Mitchell was determined not to go down without a fierce struggle. "Target their forward batteries," he barked. "Tyler, be ready with the point defense. Don't wait for my orders. Shoot anything coming our way." It was shaping up to be a grueling battle. If they didn't hold their ground, the Zorax would crush the outpost and massacre everyone inside. Failure here would grant the aliens a foothold to expand further into human space. Mitchell was resolute. He would fight to his last breath to prevent that from happening. As the space battle raged on, a maelstrom of fire and debris, it became clear that this was merely the prelude to a far grander conflict. The Zorax, led by High Commander Krelian, had watched humanity's rapid rise to prominence with growing alarm. Humans advanced technologically at a startling pace, spreading across the stars with alarming speed and aggression. To Krelian, humanity appeared almost purpose-built for warfare, thriving amid chaos like nothing he had ever witnessed. Fearful that humanity, if left unchecked, might become an existential threat to the Zorax, Krelian had resolved to launch a preemptive strike to stifle this growing menace before it grew beyond their control. Yet he was unaware of the true nature of what he had unleashed. The unprovoked assault on the human outpost sparked a storm of outrage and defiance across human space. Humanity was no stranger to fighting for its survival. The Zorax were about to experience firsthand what all that resilience and grit could achieve. High Command immediately authorized a massive retaliatory campaign, mobilizing regiments and fleets across human space for an all-out offensive. The very future of both species now hung in the balance as they stood on the brink of total war. The Zorax believed their technological superiority would guarantee victory, but they failed to account for humanity's ability to adapt, innovate, and overcome insurmountable odds. For the Zorax, war was a cold, calculated affair, executed with rigid precision. For humans, it was chaotic, bloody, and messy, a crucible that forged their greatest strengths. As the conflict intensified, the stark contrast between the two species became evident. Humans were independent-minded, adaptable, and resilient, able to turn disadvantages into advantages. Their entire history was marked by conflict, making them incredibly dangerous and unpredictable foes. In contrast, the Zorax were regimented and inflexible, ill-equipped to handle an enemy that defied their rigid doctrines. Krelian, as he studied human history and psychology, grew increasingly unnerved. He saw a species that seemed to revel in the pandemonium of war in a way that chilled him to the core. What had he unleashed by provoking them? Could the Zorax prevail against an adversary whose very existence seemed forged for relentless, unyielding warfare? These were the questions that would determine the fate of galaxies as human and Zorax forces clashed on multiple fronts. With the first shots fired, There was no turning back. At the forefront of this civilizational conflict, Captain Ryan Mitchell and his brave crew would find themselves leading humanity's fierce stand against Zorax aggression. They would embody the indomitable human spirit that the Zorax so feared and misunderstood in the crucible of battle. Mitchell was poised to become the spearhead of humanity's unyielding resistance. As the battered human outpost shuddered under the Zorax onslaught, he steeled himself for the defining battle of his life, one that would determine not just his survival, but the survival of his entire species. The Zorax wanted war with humanity, and Mitchell vowed to make them regret their arrogance, down to the last alien. This was just the beginning of the war, but he swore to whatever gods were listening that humanity would still be standing on the final day, no matter the cost in blood. Captain Ryan Mitchell stood before the holographic display, analyzing the massive Zorax shipyard with a grim expression. His teeth were clenched as he absorbed the intelligence briefing. This facility was producing warships at a rate that could overwhelm human forces. "Your mission is critical, Captain," Admiral Harrington's voice crackled over the comm. "Destroy that shipyard at all costs." Mitchell nodded resolutely. "Understood, sir. We'll get it done." He assembled his strike team, a dozen of humanity's finest soldiers. They boarded a stealth shuttle, its hull coated with experimental cloaking technology, and launched into Zorax space. The weight of trillions of human lives pressed heavily on Mitchell's shoulders. As the team navigated through dense Zorax patrols, alarms blared twice when they came dangerously close to detection. Mitchell held his breath, knowing that discovery meant certain death. Touching down on the shipyard's planet under the cover of darkness, they faced a treacherous alien landscape of corrosive pools and toxic air. Mitchell signaled his team forward. "Watch your step. No unnecessary comms." As they neared the shipyard, plasma bolts suddenly streaked through the night sky. A Zorax security force had spotted them. Mitchell dove for cover as his team returned fire. "Damn it, push forward. We have to reach those control centers." The humans clashed with waves of Zorax defenders in chaotic combat. The acrid smell of ozone mixed with the screams of the wounded, strobing weapons fire illuminating the twisted metal and alien architecture. Mitchell watched his soldiers fall as they slowly advanced. They split up to plant charges. Just as Mitchell was about to set an explosive, a voice shouted, "Hold it right there, human!" Mitchell turned to see a Zorax commander, weapon trained on him. It was Commander Zorak, recognizable from intel briefings. "You're beaten," Zorak declared. "Surrender now." Mitchell stood slowly, his mind racing. "Tell me, Commander, do you really believe you can win this war?" Zorak hesitated, caught off guard. "What about your rigid tactics, your by-the-book approach?" Mitchell pressed. "How can that possibly defeat an enemy as adaptable as us? Our superior technology means nothing if you can't outthink us." Zorak's doubt flickered, but before he could respond, alarms blared again. Zorak's reinforcements were on their way. "Time's up," Mitchell said, slamming the detonator. The shipyard trembled as explosions rocked it. Mitchell sprinted for the exit, leaving Zorak behind. His remaining team members regrouped and boarded a Zorax shuttle, blasting off as the facility collapsed. Mitchell slumped into his seat, exhausted. They had succeeded, but at a terrible cost. The shuttle was eerily quiet as it soared back to human space, carrying the weight of their victory and the enormity of the battle that lay ahead. Captain Ryan Mitchell sat in the dimly lit briefing room, the tension palpable as the flickering lights of the holographic display cast long shadows across his face. The aftermath of the raid on the Zorax shipyard had left him physically and emotionally drained, but the mission's success was a small solace in the face of the greater war now unfolding. His strike team's losses were not forgotten, and the weight of their sacrifice bore heavily on his shoulders. Admiral Harrington's stern face appeared in the hologram, eyes narrowing with unspoken resolve. "Captain Mitchell, you've proven your mettle, but this conflict is far from over. The Zorax won't take this lying down. Expect a retaliatory strike." Mitchell nodded. "Understood, Admiral. What's the next objective?" Harrington's face shifted to a grim expression. "Our intelligence has pinpointed a Zorax command nexus on the planet Sarin 9. It's heavily fortified and serves as a key coordination center for their forces. Destroying it will cripple their ability to mobilize and strategize. Mitchell's eyes burned with determination. We'll need to deploy a full-scale assault to breach their defenses. What's the plan? The Admiral's hologram flickered, bringing up a detailed map of Sarin 9. You'll lead a combined force, ground troops, and air support. The terrain is rugged and treacherous. We've managed to get some intel on their defensive positions. You'll have a window of opportunity during the next eclipse when their shields are temporarily down. Got it. We'll strike then. Mitchell's voice was resolute, though the pressure was evident. The Admiral's gaze softened slightly. Mitchell, I know this isn't easy, but you've shown that humanity can stand against the Zorax and win. Keep that spirit alive. With the briefing concluded, Mitchell gathered his senior officers. The tension in the room was thick, a reflection of the high stakes and the heavy toll of their recent victories. Lieutenant Sarah Lang, Mitchell's trusted second-in-command, stood by his side, her face a mask of steely resolve. "All right, team," Mitchell began. "We've got our next target. Sarin 9. We'll be hitting them hard and fast. Intel indicates that the Zorax are expecting retaliation, so they'll be on high alert. We'll need to leverage every advantage we have." Lieutenant Lang nodded. "We'll prep the ground and air forces. I'll ensure that all units are ready for the assault." As the preparations commenced, the atmosphere aboard the ship was a whirlwind of activity. Crews checked equipment, strategists reviewed plans, and soldiers prepared for what was shaping up to be another fierce confrontation. Mitchell's thoughts often drifted to the men and women he had lost, their faces a constant reminder of the stakes. The eve of the attack arrived with a heavy silence. The final briefing was held in the ship's command center. Mitchell looked around at his team, tired but resolute. They all knew the gravity of their mission. "We strike during the eclipse," Mitchell said. "Our main objectives are to neutralize their command and disrupt their operations. We need to be swift and precise. The survival of countless lives depends on this operation." The ship's engines roared to life as they slipped into the darkness of space, approaching Sarin 9. The planet loomed large on the view screen, its surface a patchwork of barren landscapes and harsh, alien terrain. The Zorax command nexus was a sprawling fortress, heavily defended and cloaked in an energy shield that flickered sporadically, as predicted. As the eclipse began, Mitchell's team descended to the planet's surface under the cover of darkness, the ship's stealth systems keeping them invisible to Zorax scanners. The shuttle touched down amidst the jagged terrain, its hull blending seamlessly with the rocky environment. Mitchell and his team disembarked, their boots crunching on the coarse ground as they advanced toward the fortress. The assault began with a coordinated barrage from their air support, which hammered the Zorax defenses and created a breach. Ground troops moved swiftly, taking advantage of the confusion. Mitchell's team engaged with the Zorax defenders, their advanced weapons cutting through the enemy ranks with deadly efficiency. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning metal and ozone. Explosions lit up the sky, and the ground trembled under the intensity of the battle. Mitchell moved with purpose, his every action driven by the need to avenge their fallen comrades and secure a crucial victory. In the midst of the chaos, Mitchell's team reached the core of the Zorax command center. The complex was a labyrinth of steel and energy barriers. With precise coordination, they planted explosives at key structural points, ensuring the facility's collapse. As the countdown began, Mitchell and his team fought their way out, pushing through the remaining Zorax defenders. The fortress's collapse was imminent, a cacophony of destruction that marked a pivotal blow to the Zorax war effort. Breathing heavily, Mitchell and his remaining team members boarded their shuttle, retreating as the command nexus erupted in a massive explosion. They soared back to their ship, exhausted but victorious. The return journey was somber. The shuttle's crew was silent, their faces etched with the strain of combat. They had achieved their objective, but the cost of war was never far from their minds. Upon reaching their ship, Admiral Harrington's voice came through the comms, filled with relief and respect. "Mitchell, you've done exceptional work. The loss of the command nexus will significantly hinder the Zorax's operations." Mitchell's eyes were tired but resolute. "Thank you, Admiral. We'll keep pushing forward." As he prepared for the next phase of the conflict, Mitchell knew that this war was far from over. The Zorax would retaliate, and humanity's struggle would continue. But with each victory, they carved a path toward survival, proving that the spirit of humanity was a force the Zorax had grossly underestimated. In the crucible of battle, Mitchell and his team would face whatever came next with the same unyielding resolve, knowing that their fight was not just for their survival, but for the future of all humanity. Captain Ryan Mitchell stared at the tactical display, the blue and red icons of the galaxy map flickering with updates. The destruction of the Zorax command nexus on Saren 9 had been a decisive victory, but it was only a prelude to the larger conflict. The Zorax were a formidable enemy, and their retaliation would be swift and brutal. The ship's command center was abuzz with activity. Officers and analysts worked in a synchronized frenzy, compiling data from the latest skirmishes and preparing for the inevitable counterstrike. Lieutenant Sarah Lang approached Mitchell with a stack of reports, her face lined with fatigue but determined. "Captain," Lang said, handing him the reports, "we've intercepted Zorax communications indicating a massive fleet assembling in the Nera system. They're mobilizing for a significant offensive." Mitchell scanned the reports quickly. "They're planning to hit us hard. We need to prepare for a major engagement." Lang nodded. "We've got a few days before they're ready to launch. We should use that time to fortify our defenses and disrupt their fleet assembly as much as possible." Mitchell sighed, knowing the weight of the decision ahead. "Agreed. Let's start with a reconnaissance mission. We need to get eyes on their fleet and assess their readiness." The night before the mission, Mitchell sat alone in his quarters, the silence a stark contrast to the chaos of battle. He reviewed the photographs and data from previous engagements, trying to anticipate the Zorax's next moves. His mind kept drifting to the faces of those he'd lost, their sacrifices driving him to ensure their deaths were not in vain. Lieutenant Lang knocked gently before entering. "Captain, we're ready for the briefing." The teams assembled in the operations room. Mitchell nodded, rising from his chair. "I'll be right there." In the operations room, Mitchell addressed his team, a group of experienced soldiers and strategists, their faces reflecting the gravity of the situation. "Our objective is to gather intelligence on the Zorax fleet in the Nera system. We'll be using a stealth reconnaissance shuttle to get close without detection. Once we have the data, we'll plan our next move." Major Jackson Cole, the team's tactical expert, spoke up. "We'll need to be cautious. The Zorax are aware that we've been disrupting their operations, so they'll be on high alert. Our stealth technology will give us an advantage, but we should expect heavy patrols." Mitchell nodded. "We'll be in and out quickly. Our priority is to gather as much information as possible and return before they realize we're there." The team prepped their gear and boarded the stealth shuttle. The vessel, cloaked in advanced stealth technology, slipped through the darkness of space toward the Nera system. The journey was tense, the crew silent and focused. As they approached the system, the shuttle's sensors picked up the enormity of the Zorax fleet. Dozens of warships, including dreadnoughts and cruisers, were gathered in a formation that suggested a coordinated attack was imminent. Mitchell's eyes widened as he took in the scale of the threat. "Looks like they're preparing for a full-scale assault," Lang said, her voice steady despite the tension. Mitchell tapped into the shuttle's communication system, sending a secure transmission back to the command ship. "We've got eyes on the fleet. They're assembling a large task force. We'll need to act quickly to counter this threat." Back at the command ship, Admiral Harrington received the transmission with a grave expression. "Captain Mitchell, this is a significant development. We can't afford to let them launch this offensive unchallenged. Prepare to deploy a counteroffensive strike force." Mitchell acknowledged the order. "Understood, Admiral. We'll need to deploy our forces strategically to hit their fleet while minimizing the risk to our own assets." As the stealth shuttle returned to the command ship, Mitchell and his team debriefed the Admiral and the senior staff. The data revealed that the Zorax fleet was preparing for a multi-pronged assault, targeting several key human installations. They would need to deploy their forces in a way that could thwart the Zorax's plans while protecting critical assets. In the days that followed, the human fleet mobilized with precision. Troops and ships were dispatched to strategic locations, and defensive measures were put in place. The atmosphere on the command ship was a mix of urgency and resolve. Mitchell stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the viewscreen displaying the approaching Zorax fleet. Lieutenant Lang and Major Cole flanked him, their faces set with determination. "We're ready," Lang said, her voice steady. "Our forces are in position, and we've prepared countermeasures for their initial strike." "Good," Mitchell replied. "We need to be prepared for anything. The Zorax will be expecting a fight, and we can't afford to give them an inch." The command ship's crew went through the final checks, ensuring that every system was operational and ready for combat. The ship's weapons systems hummed with power, and the shields were primed for the impending battle. As the Zorax fleet emerged from hyperspace, the intensity of the conflict reached its peak. The space around the Nera system lit up with flashes of energy as both sides clashed. Human ships engaged the Zorax with coordinated strikes, their firepower blunting the initial assault and pushing the Zorax back. Mitchell's command ship was at the forefront of the battle, its guns blazing as it engaged enemy vessels. The Zorax were formidable, their ships advanced and heavily armed, but the human fleet fought with a ferocity born of desperation and determination. In the heat of the battle, Mitchell's focus was sharp. He directed his forces with precision, leveraging their strengths and exploiting the weaknesses of the Zorax fleet. The battle was fierce, but the human resolve proved to be a powerful counter to the Zorax's aggression. As the battle raged on, the outcome remained uncertain. Both sides fought with relentless intensity, each maneuver and strike pushing them closer to victory or defeat. For Mitchell and his crew, the fight was not just for survival but for the future of humanity itself. In the midst of the chaos, Mitchell remained a beacon of leadership and resolve, guiding his crew and forces through the storm of battle. The clash with the Zorax had escalated into a full-scale war, and the fires of conflict burned brightly, threatening to consume everything in their path. The war was far from over, and the path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty. But as the battle for the Nera system continued, Mitchell and his crew stood resolute, their spirits unbroken as they faced the gathering storm of war.